My name is Mark Jensen. I drive a forklift for a frozen food distribution center just north of Des Moines, Iowa. If you are hearing this, it means I figured out how to keep this old system talking to somebody besides myself. That already feels like more than I had an hour ago. I am sitting in the dispatch office right now. The glass in front of me looks down over 3 warehouse bays, all lit in this pale white that makes everything feel colder than it already is. On the left are the frozen aisles, raised dock doors, and pallets wrapped tight in plastic. On the right is the loading yard, and beyond that is open Iowa night. I can see the tops of the sodium lights in the parking lot and the long shadows where the cornfields start. The sky over them is not dark anymore. There are blue columns hanging in the air. They are not moving. They just sit there over the horizon, the way grain silos sit at the edge of the town. Only there were no blue columns yesterday. I am not a host. I am not trained for this. I am a 38-year-old guy who has spent the last 9 years moving boxes of frozen pizza and vegetables for a living and trying to keep up with a kid who is smarter than me. My son's name is Tyler Jensen. He is 19. He was in his second semester at the University of Iowa in Iowa City when all of this started. I have not heard his voice since early this afternoon, when the first blue light appeared over the fields and my phone turned into a useless rectangle with a battery icon stuck on the same bar. That is why I'm on this thing. I am trying to reach him, and if I cannot do that, I'm at least going to keep talking until someone answers. I should explain where I am so this does not sound like some story cooked up in a bar. This building is a refrigerated warehouse on the northeast side of Des Moines, closer to Ankeny than to downtown. If you have ever driven up Interstate 35 past the Interstate 80 split, you have probably seen our place without caring. Big white box, few semis backed into docks, steam venting from a condenser on the roof. Inside, it is 180,000 square feet of racks and pallets and narrow aisles. The air in the freezer hovers around 10 degrees Fahrenheit. The receiving bays are a little warmer, but you can still see your breath if you stand too long by the overhead doors. There is a small office cluster up front where management sit during the day. Dispatch has the radios, old computers, and a landline system that still runs on copper in the ground. Out in the maintenance room we have a backup generator, a diesel tank, and a little rack of communication equipment that no one touches unless a trucker cannot get a handheld to connect. Earlier today, when the cell network began dropping in and out and the regular radio station started looping the same emergency alert over and over, I remembered that rack. I came in here, opened a metal box that smelled of dust and old fingerprints, and started tracing cables until something responded when I hit the push to talk. If you are wondering why the hell a forklift driver is still in the building during all of this, the short answer is that I was on second shift and we were behind on a load. The long answer is that I did not want to go home and sit in the dark, refreshing a dead phone while my son was 2 hours east on Interstate 80 with no car and a campus that might be falling apart around him. Here, at least, I have diesel in a tank, batteries, food that never goes bad, and walls thick enough to make me feel slightly less exposed. I also have a few coworkers who did not get out before the roads turned into parking lots. One of them is here in the office with me. Her name is Nisha Patel. She runs inventory, which means she is usually the one telling me I put something in the wrong slot. She stayed late to finish end-of-month counts and got trapped when the alerts started. She is the one who found the manual for this radio gear and pointed out that we still had active landlines. She is not on the mic much. She is sitting to my right with a notepad trying to write down names and places so we do not lose track of who we hear from. If you hear a quieter voice in the background once in a while, that is her. We lost power around 3 in the afternoon. The lights flickered, the condenser fans wound down, and the refrigeration alarm started screaming. That sound is horrible on a normal day, but today it felt like a countdown. I ran back to the generator room, opened the fuel valve, and started the diesel. It coughed a cloud of black exhaust against the cinder block wall, and then settled into a steady drone. The emergency lights came back on, the freezer unit spun up, and the building was alive again. The radio equipment in the rack next to the generator lit up with a soft amber glow. That is when I realized it was not just a backup for our trucks. It was wired into a larger repeater system the company used years ago, before everyone just kept cell phones in their pockets. When I first keyed the mic, all I heard was noise, not static. Just a crowded rush of sounds from too many places at once. Bits of voices, some English, some not, and underneath it something that did not sound like speech. It sounded more ordered than static, if that makes sense. Nisha flipped another switch, adjusted a dial, and the mess narrowed into a hissing band with occasional bursts of clear audio. That is when I heard a woman crying and repeating that she did not know where her husband went. I'm going to replay what I remember from that first call because it is still sitting on my spine. The woman identified herself as Helen Moore. She said she was from a farm outside Marshalltown, east of here on Highway 30. She sounded in her 60s. She talked fast, but I'm going to slow it down for you.
My name is Helen, and I live outside Marshalltown on the north side near the wind turbines. My husband, Dan, went out to check on the generator after the power cut at about 1 in the afternoon. It was just another outage, we thought. I watched him walk across the yard from the kitchen window. There was a blue light hanging over the far field, over by the soybean line. But it had been there for 10 minutes already, and it had not moved, so I told myself it was some strange reflection or something new at the wind farm. Dan waved at me from the yard. I waved back. I turned to put the kettle on. I heard the back door close and his boots on the steps. Then everything went quiet. I called his name and there was no answer. I walked outside and the yard was empty. The grass was still bent where he had just walked. The generator door was open. His hat was in the dirt. There were no footprints beyond his last step. It felt wrong in a way I do not know how to explain. Then I checked the clock on the wall. It said 3:27. I remember turning to the counter and seeing the kettle already boiling. I had no memory of the last 2 hours. I called my sister in town, but her phone went straight to that emergency message. I walked back into the yard and looked up at the blue light. It was exactly where it had been. It did not look closer or farther. It just sat there. I think it took him. I think it took 2 hours from me while it did it.
Helen kept talking for a long time. She described the way the animals refused to leave the barn, the way the cicadas had gone silent. She kept asking if anyone else around Marshalltown had seen the same thing. I could not answer her directly because the way this thing is wired, I am not sure who hears who or how far. I just told her this building north of Des Moines was still standing and that there were at least 2 of us alive inside. I told her we would keep the generator running as long as the diesel holds. I told her to stay away from the blue light. She laughed when I said that, the kind of laugh people make when there is nothing else left to do. Nisha scribbled, Marshalltown, blue light, missing time, missing husband, on her pad and underlined it 3 times. Then she pointed through the glass toward the sky over the east dock doors. I turned and looked. There was a blue column past the town, past Altoona, farther than I like to think about, sitting over the distance where Marshalltown and the turbines would be. If you are listening in Bray, and you are closer to all that than I am, you probably already know the basic pattern. First the alerts, then the blue, then the quiet. Then that missing piece of time where the day jumps forward. Something is gone, and you do not remember the moment that did the cutting. And somewhere in there, your local world empties out. Cars in the road with doors open. A tractor half turned in a ditch. A dog barking at nothing until its own throat gets tired. Another voice broke through the noise about half an hour after Helen. The generator had settled into a rhythm by then. The warehouse had taken on that low, steady hum it gets when the compressors line up together. The emergency lights fired everything in beams instead of floods. I stood there with the plastic mugs of coffee Nisha had reheated on a hot plate and thought about Tyler in Iowa City. I saw the campus in my head the way it had looked at his orientation. Kinnick Stadium, the river, the hospital towers. I tried to put those things under these blue columns, and my mind kept pushing back, as if the picture refused to sit. The next caller said he was on Interstate 80 near the Davenport exit on the Mississippi side. Name was Raul Gonzalez. long-haul trucker out of Kansas City. He spoke in one long stream that I'm going to cut into pieces only so you can follow it.
I am Raul. I drive refrigerated freight for a living out of Kansas City, mostly meat and produce, and I was bringing a load up toward Chicago, past Iowa City, past Coralville, all the way out to the Quad Cities. I hit the section near Davenport where you can see the city lights and the bridge. Around noon, the first alert hit my phone. That stupid tone blew out my eardrums and the message said, "National security incident. Shelter in place. Avoid windows. Avoid looking directly at unidentified aerial phenomena," government jargon like that. I am on the road with a 53-foot trailer in a line of 100 other rigs, and I am supposed to shelter in place where? Exactly. So I turned the phone off and kept rolling slower. Then the sky ahead of us turned blue in one column, straight above the bridge. The cars in front of me started to slow, then stopped. People got out. Somebody opened my passenger door without asking, climbed in and asked if I heard it too. I told him I do not hear anything. He stared at me and said, "There is music in the air." Then my rig died. The dashboard went black. The engine cut. I coasted to the shoulder and hit the emergency brake. When I looked up again, it was night. That is the part that does not fit. It had been noon. I looked at the clock. The clock said 19:30. The bridge was still there. The blue light was still hanging over the river. Some cars had their doors open, but there was no one in them. Some rigs were jackknifed. One had the trailer across both lanes. There was nobody inside. The man who had opened my door was gone, and the passenger seat was empty. My trailer temperature had not changed in all those hours, even though the engine was off. It was like time skipped for me, but not for the refrigeration unit. I got the engine restarted only after I walked 50 yards away from that blue light. Every time I try to drive back toward Davenport, the dash turns off again and the engine dies. So I am backed up on the shoulder facing west, stuck in a line of trucks that cannot go forward, and I do not know where the drivers went.
He repeated that last part 3 times.
I do not know where the drivers went.
Nisha wrote, Interstate 80, Davenport Bridge, engines die near blue light, missing drivers on the paper. She added a little box around the words music in the air, even though Raul said I did not hear it. If any of you are near the Quad Cities, near Bettendorf or Davenport or Rock Island, and you still have eyes on that bridge, I want you to listen to what Raul just said and remember the engine part. There is a line, somewhere near those blue columns, where things that run on power start to act wrong. Our generator is still fine inside this concrete box. But I'm not going to take a truck toward that glow, even if it could get me closer to my son. I am stubborn, but I am not suicidal. You are hearing all of this through a system that was never meant to be used like this. On a normal day, this setup would just let dispatch talk to drivers about which dock door to hit, or which pallet got loaded wrong. Now those trucks are parked in all the wrong places, and the drivers are either home with their families or missing hours from their memories. The funny part is that the things no one cared about for years, like these dusty wires and old repeater boxes, are suddenly the only chain I have left to throw out there. Around 5 in the afternoon, after Raul faded out, something new stepped on the signal. It did not announce itself. There was no break or click. It just slid over everything else slowly until the hiss and distant voices thinned. At first, I thought the generator had changed pitch, or one of the compressors in the freezer had cycled, because the sound did not feel like a voice. It felt more like standing under a highway overpass when a single truck passes and everything in your chest vibrates for a second. But it was not that either. It had structure. There were repeated patterns. The closest word I can find is phrases, but they were not in any language I recognize. There were pauses in between, as if whatever produced it was stopping to listen for an answer. Nisha froze in her chair. Her pen hovered over the notebook. She slowly took her headset off and set it down, but the sound was still there in the room, bleeding from the small monitor speaker. We sat without talking for maybe 30 seconds. The lights flickered once, not all at once, but from back to front through the racks, like someone walked through the building and brushed past each fixture. Then the sound cut off in the middle of one of those not quite phrases. When it cut, every hair on my right arm stood up at the same time. 2 seconds later, the human voices came back. Emergency services from somewhere in Illinois tried to coordinate roadblocks. A voice I later realized was from Tennessee kept repeating traffic instructions around Knoxville. For a few minutes, it sounded almost normal, the way a disaster drill might sound if you heard it from a distance with the windows closed. Then a new voice joined in, and my spine tightened. Because it was the first voice that made me realize the invasion part of this thing is not just in the sky. The man identified himself as the Staff Sergeant Robert Torres, Iowa Army National Guard, based out of Camp Dodge, which is northwest of here in Johnston. He spoke in clipped, professional tones at first, even though you could hear the strain under it. He did not say which unit he was with, just that he was operating with a quick reaction force tasked with assisting Des Moines police and state troopers in keeping people away from the largest blue column, which at that point was hanging over the downtown core near the river, close to the Capitol building.
This is Staff Sergeant Torres, Iowa Guard. We have engaged in crowd control. Operations near East Grand and East Court. That is the area between the Capitol and the river. And we have lost contact with multiple elements, not because their radios failed, but because they stopped answering to their own names. I'm going to be very clear here. We had a squad from Bravo Company move forward to disperse civilians who had clustered under the blue light near the pedestrian bridge. They checked in at 0930 hours. They reported some people in the crowd were unresponsive, staring straight up, repeating the same phrases about waiting for someone to arrive. At 0940 hours, the squad leader, Sergeant Latham, reported that one of his own men had dropped formation and was walking towards the light. When ordered to stop, the soldier turned and recited his name, rank, and serial in a flat tone, then turned back toward the light and kept walking. Latham physically restrained him. The soldier went limp, then started repeating word for word everything Latham said into the radio, including his own commands, in the same voice, at the same time, like an echo with no delay. Latham reports that 3 more members of his squad began doing the same thing within the next minute. He tried to withdraw. The last thing we heard from him was the sound of his own voice repeating, "We are not ourselves," over and over in sync with 4 other people. We lost his squad marker on the tablet after that. The icon just faded. We still see the blue light. It has not moved. Civilians who are under it are gone. The ground is undisturbed.
I caught myself holding the mic so tight my fingers hurt. That phrase stuck in my head, "We are not ourselves." I looked at Nisha and she met my eyes without saying anything. It is one thing to hear about people disappearing under lights. It is another thing to picture trained soldiers losing their own names and repeating someone else. Torres kept talking. He said some of his men had started reporting headaches, a buzzing in their teeth, and an urge to walk toward the lights even when they were miles away. He said they were pulling back toward Camp Dodge and trying to hardwire their radios into older equipment, something with less digital routing. He thought the newer systems were more vulnerable because the interference could route through secure channels and repeaters. He sounded tired. There was a gunshot somewhere in the background during his report, but he did not react to it, so I could not tell if it was near him or just another voice bleeding in. At some point while he was talking, a second voice started overlapping his, repeating certain words in the same rhythm but in a different tone. It was not an echo. It was more like someone had taken Torres's speech, cut it into strips, and laid some of the strips on top of each other. So you would hear, "We have lost contact, contact, lost. Have contact, contact," in a little wash while he kept going. He did not respond to it. I'm not sure he even heard it. Nisha pointed at the speaker with the end of her pen, then wrote, "Loss of identity, voice stacking" in her notebook. I'm telling you all this in detail because if you start hearing your own words spoken back at you, that is not normal stress. That is not you losing it. Something out there is stepping through our systems and trying on our voices the way you would test a jacket before buying it. Around the time Torres's signal faded, my phone buzzed. It had not done that in hours. I snatched it so fast I almost pulled the cable out of the wall, even though it was not plugged in anywhere useful. The screen showed one notification. One text message, time-stamped 2 hours earlier, finally pushed through whatever mess the network is in. It was from Tyler. It said,
Dad, we are leaving campus. Heading west. Phone's messed up. Power weird. Do not come toward Iowa City. Love you.
That was it. No detail, no mention of who we were, no indication where they were exactly. Just that. I read those words over and over. I nodded without quite feeling my neck move. I tried calling back. The phone showed a call screen for half a second, then crashed to the emergency alert message again. The same national warning tone, the same advice that already failed for half the people who tried to follow it. That is the moment I had to decide whether to lock this building down and ride this out, or take one of the straight trucks in the yard and go tearing down Interstate 80 toward a blue light that eats engines and people. I walked out of the office, down the metal stairs, and into the receiving bay. The cold hit my cheeks. The moisture from the last time the doors opened still hung in the air. There were 2 straight trucks backed into doors 3 and 4, both loaded with pallets of frozen vegetables that probably would not make it to their grocery stores. Their keys hung on hooks by the manager's desk. I could smell diesel from the generator room. I could hear the steady clunk of compressors cycling somewhere behind the wall. I walked to door 3, grabbed the key tagged with its number, and walked out into the yard. The night had gone strange. It was not completely dark. The blue columns over Des Moines and farther east cast a faint glow, enough that I could see the tops of the light poles and the way the metal of the trailers shone without any direct beam on them. In the distance, toward downtown, one column was broader than the rest. It looked less like a beam and more like a wide pillar. I could not see a source. No ship, no structure. Just the light hanging there, over where the river bends. I opened the truck door and pulled myself into the seat. The cab smelled of coffee and winter jackets. Trickles of melting frost slid down the windshield. I sat there with my hand on the ignition, looking past the parking lot toward Interstate 35, picturing the on-ramps filled with cars that may not have moved since noon. If the things in the sky can cut out engines near their lights, there is a good chance I would not even make it to West Des Moines before getting stranded. And if I do somehow get closer to Iowa City, every mile takes me nearer to the center of whatever is doing this. I turned the key halfway, listened to the dash lights come on, then turned it back off. It felt wrong, abandoning the drive toward my own kid. It felt worse to imagine dying in a cab on the side of the road while he walked somewhere behind me with no idea I had even tried. Here, at least, I can send my voice in more directions than the headlights can reach. Here, I can tell him to stay away from some things and toward others, if he is listening on anything at all. So I got out of the cab, locked it, and went back inside. If you are a parent and you think that makes me a coward, you are free to think that. I am balancing 3 bad options and trying to pick the one that keeps the most doors open. Nisha did not argue with me. She just handed me another mug of coffee and slid the notebook closer to the console. Somewhere around 7 at night, the generator hiccuped. The lights dimmed, then brightened. The radio stack reset. I swore and reached for the controls, but the system came back on its own. Only now, instead of a spread of faint voices, one feed came through very clear. It sounded like a college kid. Male, early 20s, Midwestern accent. He said his name was Peter, but the more he talked, the more my stomach turned, because his story lined up too closely with what I had pictured in my head for Tyler.
My name is Peter Lang. I'm a sophomore at the University of Iowa, and I do not know how long I have. I am in an apartment just off Dubuque Street, near the river. I was in lecture this morning in Van Allen Hall physics class when all our phones went off at once. The professor stopped talking and just listened with us. The alert said something about a national emergency, an unidentified threat in the atmosphere, and that we were supposed to stay away from windows and not look at it. By the time the message ended, half the class had already stood up and walked to the windows. Students on the lawn were staring at the sky. The professor tried to keep teaching for a few minutes, then just closed his laptop. The power went out. We all sat in the dark for what I thought was 2 minutes. When the lights came back up, it was 3 hours later according to the clock. The professor's chair was empty, so were half the seats. Nobody remembered them leaving. We went outside. There was a blue column hanging over Kinnick Stadium. People were walking toward it from all over campus. They did not run. They just moved steady, shoulder to shoulder, some in pajamas, some in lab coats, some in hospital scrubs from the medical center across the river. A few called out to them. Nobody answered. I tried to stop one girl because I knew her from my dorm. I grabbed her arm. She turned and stared straight through me and said, "We have been invited." Then she kept walking. I do not know where she is now. I do not think she came back.
He took a breath. You could hear him rub his face over the mic. He kept going.
A bunch of us headed back to the dorms, grabbed backpacks, bottled water, whatever food we had. There was talk of driving out of town, but cars on Highway 1 and Interstate 80 were already jammed. Someone said the National Guard was setting up roadblocks, but we did not see any near here. We saw one Humvee near the old Capitol building, but no soldiers by it, just the engine running and the doors open. We decided to walk north along Dubuque, away from the main campus. The farther we got from the stadium, the easier it felt to think. That is not a dramatic line. It literally felt like my head was stuffed with cotton near the stadium, and every block away pulled a layer out. My friend Maria started reciting our home addresses out loud, like she was checking to see if she could still remember who she was. We made it to a small apartment above a vape shop where another friend lived. We barricaded the stairwell with a couch. We have been hearing that blue hum in the distance ever since. Sometimes it gets louder without warning. When it does, we forget what we were talking about for a minute or two. Then we realize we lost the thread. I have written our names on paper and taped them to the wall so we do not lose them completely.
I wanted so badly for him to say Tyler's name in that list, but he did not. He listed Maria, a guy named Josh, another named Eli, and a fourth whose name he could not remember for a second. He kept apologizing to her, the way you apologize when you misplace your wallet.
She is the girl from Cedar Rapids. The one with the brother in the guard. I cannot see her face right now in my head. I know her. I just need a minute.
While Peter was talking, another layer crept into the sound. It started in the gaps between his sentences, then slid under his words. It was that same structured noise from before, the one that felt more like phrases than static. This time, some of it synced up with what he was saying, but in another tone. When he said, "We have been invited," the deeper layer repeated that same sentence, but in a flatter, slower cadence. Nisha reached over and turned the monitor volume down a little, but we could still hear it. Peter did not react. He just kept talking, saying they were going to try heading west on foot, away from the bigger lights, toward Coralville, and then further if they could. He said if anyone was listening from Iowa City, they should stay out of downtown and away from Kinnick Stadium. When his voice cut off, the lower one carried a few extra syllables, then stopped in the middle of a sound. The silence that followed felt weighty. Then a different feed broke in, all business again. Some emergency coordinator on the East Coast asking for head counts from hospitals in Boston. Nisha looked at me.
That could have been Tyler. Maybe not his voice, but his situation.
I nodded. I said, if he was with those kids, he is heading west, not east. That buys us something. We took turns watching the board after that. I walked the aisles more often, partly to check the freezer temps, partly because sitting still in front of the speaker for too long made my head feel floaty. The warehouse aisles are their own world. Tall racks of cardboard, each box printed with some cheerful brand logo that no one cares about tonight. The floor polished smooth by years of pallet jacks. My forklift sitting in its parking spot with the forks on the ground, key removed. I ran my hand along its frame as I passed. It is dumb, but that machine has paid my bills for almost a decade. Seeing it idle in this kind of quiet felt wrong. On my third lap, through the aisles, near the back where the frozen meat is stored, I felt something strange. The air is always cold back there, but this was different. There was a sudden stillness, the kind you get when the fans spin down for maintenance. Only I had not touched anything. The compressors had not stopped. The sound was still there, but the feeling of moving air vanished. For a moment it felt like the inside of a sealed jar. My ears popped slightly. I looked up and saw a faint shimmer near the ceiling, near the sprinkler lines and the metal girders. No color, no flash, just a blur so small that I would have missed it on any normal night. Then it disappeared. In that same moment, my watch jumped. I will admit something here. I do not own a nice watch. My ex-wife bought me a cheap digital thing years ago that I still wear out of habit. It is not fancy enough to talk to satellites. It just counts. I happened to glance at it when the air changed. The numbers were halfway between 7:30 and 7:31. I blinked, and it read 9:45. My stomach flipped. I ran back toward the front of the warehouse. The office lights were dimmer. My coffee was cold. Nisha was in the same chair, but her posture was different, as if she had settled into a new position long enough for her muscles to give up. She looked at me with wide eyes and said,
You have been gone a long time.
I told her I had been around the corner for a couple of minutes. She showed me her notebook. She had filled 2 full pages, names, cities, notes. Calls from Omaha, from Chicago, from Minneapolis. A doctor from the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, describing patients who stared at nothing and repeated the same phrase about a journey without moving their mouths. A police officer from Omaha talking about entire families, found standing in living rooms facing walls. I had missed all of it. I sat down slowly. My leg muscles burned a little, as if I had been walking longer than I remembered. The generator hum had shifted slightly. The fuel gauge had dropped more than it should have for the time I thought had passed. Nisha pointed at my watch and said,
Yeah, mine did that too. I turned it off. I could not stand watching it jump.
We are not dealing with something that just sits in the sky and beams tractor beams at stadiums. This thing bends our experience of time inside buildings, inside our own heads. It slides in through the air, or whatever passes for atmosphere, around those blue columns and edits the tape we think is continuous. People talk about missing time in stories that no one believes. Out here tonight, missing time feels more common than the parts we get to keep. I am not going to lie. I am scared. I am scared in a way I have not felt since I was a teenager stuck on Interstate 80, in a winter storm with whiteout wind and nowhere to go. Back then, at least, the world outside the windshield stayed in place. Now I cannot trust the clock on my wrist. I cannot trust the distance between Des Moines and Iowa City to stay what the map says it is. Not when the thing in the sky is reaching into our heads and pulling pieces out. You hear the word invasion and you think about ships, soldiers, landings, tanks on roads, things stepping off ramps. We have some of that, sure. Nisha looked up footage on her laptop before the internet went truly useless. There were videos from New York City, Los Angeles, London. Blue lights above skyscrapers, people filming from balconies until the picture froze mid-frame and then jumped to empty sidewalks. A clip from Tokyo of trains stopped on tracks and passengers gone. But the part that is going to break us is not the hardware. It is the way they are peeling us off ourselves one at a time in barely visible layers. Around what the clocks call midnight, I heard a voice that stopped me mid-sentence. I was in the middle of telling whoever is listening that we still had food, fuel, and some sense of order here when the speaker crackled and a familiar word punched through. It was my last name.
Jensen!
I froze. Nisha's eyes went around. We both leaned closer. The voice came through again, clearer.
Dad!
It was Tyler. Older than in my head for a second, because 19 is different from the 15 I still picture when I remember teaching him to drive. But it was him. Slight rasp when he is tired. That habit of swallowing half a word before saying the next. He said,
Dad, if you are hearing this, somebody found a way to route the phone through. I do not know how long it will hold. I am west of Iowa City. We got out. We are near a rest stop off Interstate 80, one of the ones with the vending machines and the maps on the wall. The power is dead, but there is emergency lighting in the bathrooms. There were 5 of us. Now there are 4. I do not know what happened to Eli. 1 minute he was walking next to me. Next minute we were at the bottom of the ramp. And he was not. No one remembers if he slipped away or if we all just took one step that skipped his part. That makes no sense when I say it out loud, but I know you know what I mean because you have seen weird gaps before.
I almost dropped the mic because my hands started shaking. I had forgotten I was holding the push to talk down. I let it go, then pressed it again. Careful. Tyler, this is Dad. I hear you. I am in the distribution center near Ankeny, north of Des Moines. I am on generator power. I am safe for now. Are you under any of the blue lights? He laughed once, no humor in it.
There is one over Iowa City, over the stadium, but it is east of us. There is another far west toward Des Moines. We are in the dark part between them. The sky looks wrong, like it has bruises. Maria keeps saying she can hear a low singing when she closes her eyes, even though none of us hear it. A state trooper stopped earlier and told us to get off the highway. He had that same look in his eyes as the people going toward the stadium. We did not follow him. We cut through the ditch and walked along a frontage road instead. His cruiser is gone now. I do not remember him leaving.
While he was talking, the lower layer of sound came in again. At first, it stayed behind his words. Then it started riding them. In some syllables, his own voice got doubled, as if someone else were saying the same thing, half a tone lower. When he said, "We are in the dark part between them," the lower voice repeated the word between 3 extra times in a row without him doing it. He did not seem to notice. I kept my own voice steady as best I could. Stay away from the lights. If you see any shimmer in the air, if you feel your ears pop, back up. Do not walk into anything that makes your watch jump. I have diesel here for a while. I will keep this signal going as long as I can. If you head northwest, you can skirt Des Moines and come up toward Ames. There are fields and farm roads that avoid the big interchanges. You remember the route from all the baseball tournaments. Use that. Stay small. Stay off the main lanes.
I remember. Highway 65, the back way. The one Mom always complained about because it took 20 extra minutes. I wish I could tell her she was right.
We both let that hang. Then he said quieter,
Dad, something keeps trying to get in my head when I look at the lights. It is not a voice. It is more like someone presses record halfway through my thoughts, then plays them back with pieces missing. I get scared I am going to start saying things I did not think. If that happens, if I start sounding wrong, I need you to know that I am still me under it, at least for a bit. I am not going toward them on purpose.
I wanted to tell him everything would be fine. That is what parents are supposed to do. Lying felt stupid at that point. So I said, do what you can to stay yourself. Say your own name out loud. Say your address. I do that sometimes here. It helps put walls up. There are people out there still trying. A guard unit near Des Moines, a doctor in Minnesota, truckers on the interstate. You are not alone. Head toward the spaces between the lights. That feels safer than under them. I will be on this thing as long as my hands work. He said,
Okay. I love you, Dad.
I said it back. The line stuttered. For half a second, his voice broke into fragments. Love you, you love you, in that doubled pitch. Then it snapped off. The hum under everything swelled for a moment, then dropped. If you're out there, if you are some kid walking on that frontage road near Iowa City with a backpack and busted sneakers, and you happen to catch this by accident, know that there are parents yelling into microphones all over the country right now, hoping you hear them. My kid is one of you. I am betting that keeping this chain of voices alive matters more than one more truck on an eastbound lane. Since that call, the strange transmissions have gotten bolder. They do not wait for gaps anymore. They step on top of people mid-sentence. Sometimes they use our words. Sometimes they do not. Nisha played back one segment on a loop, slowed down, and we heard phrases embedded in the hum that were definitely English. Stuff like, we hear you and we have arrived, and identity optional, jumbled out of order. There were also chunks that sounded like nothing human. Not animal noises, not mechanical whines, just precise sounds and patterns that our brains are not tuned for. The worst part is when the transmissions start using the voices of people we have already heard. A few minutes ago, Staff Sergeant Torres came back on the line, or something that sounded like him. Only the words did not line up with anything he had said before. It was a stream of phrases clearly cut from his earlier report and reassembled by someone with no sense of context. We have lost ourselves. Crowd control. We are invited. We lost contact. We are not ourselves. He said those things in a steady tone, no breaks, no reaction to anything else on the channel. It went on for 4 straight minutes. Then it cut off mid-word. I do not think that was him anymore. I think whatever is on the other end of these blue columns is recording us the way you would record bird calls. Then it plays them back to see what happens. Maybe it is testing how we respond to our own voices being thrown at us. Maybe it is checking which words get the biggest reaction. Nisha crossed out Torres on her list and wrote voice captured next to it. She said it made her feel better to treat it as a lost file instead of a lost person. I do not know if that is kinder or crueler. Physically, nothing has changed inside this building in any dramatic way. The walls are still here. The racks are still stocked. The freezer still feels like a giant mouth every time I walk in. But mentally, I can feel little chips being taken out of the edges. A second goes missing here, a minute there. I reached for my coffee a little while ago and found an empty mug and a fresh cup next to it. Nisha swears she handed me the fresh one an hour ago. I have no memory of drinking the first. It is a small thing. It is also a crack. If you are somewhere safe and you still have control over your lights and doors, here is what I have learned in the last day that might help. Do not stare into the blue, not out of some sci-fi superstition, but because the longer you look at it, the easier it is for time to slip and for you not to care. Stay near walls, not just for physical cover, but because when the air does that sealed jar thing, it seems stronger in open spaces. The warehouse aisles feel more stable than the yard. Smaller spaces, less room for the shimmer maybe. Old tech beats new in this mess. Landlines, analog radios, diesel engines with as few digital pieces as possible. Anything that requires constant connection to some network is suspect. I watched Nisha's modern smartphone reboot itself 3 times in a row, each time with the same flicker of blue on the screen that matches the columns outside. She shut it off and pulled the battery. Her old flip phone, the one she kept in a drawer for nostalgia, still works enough to send short texts when the network feels generous. Emotionally talk to yourself in full sentences. That sounds silly until you realize that the invader here is not just an army, but a pressure that smooths out your edges. When you feel yourself zoning out, when a gap appears in your day, fill it by saying your name, your address, something real and boring about your life. My name is Mark Jensen. I drive a forklift in Ankeny, Iowa. My son is 19 and stubborn and likes bad metal bands. I drink too much gas station coffee. I hate the Chicago Cubs and still watch every game. Stuff like that. It anchors you in your own skin. We have heard from a nurse in Chicago who hid in a stairwell at Northwestern Memorial Hospital while blue lights hung over the loop and patients walked out of their rooms. We have heard from a farmer in Nebraska who watched an entire herd of cattle walk under a glowing column and then vanish in a blink, leaving nothing but hoofprints in the dirt. We have heard from a woman in Atlanta who says the big cities in the South are quieter than she has ever heard them, with only helicopters circling far above and never landing. Every story has the same undercurrent: missing time. People repeating one phrase about being invited or chosen. A hum in the teeth. No one has reported seeing a clear physical shape of what these things are. No gray bodies stepping off ships. No tripod walkers stomping through downtown. That absence bothers me more than any monster would. It means whatever is doing this does not need to come down where we can see it. It can rewrite us from above and through our own infrastructure. Nisha just handed me a new note. She heard something while I was walking the aisles. A voice claiming to be from Colorado Springs, near some military facility out there, said they watched the sky over the mountains turn blue in a ring, not a column. They said the ring shrank over about 10 minutes, then snapped inward. When it did, every radio in their building played the same sentence at the same time in the same voice. The sentence was, "You are welcome." Then all their screens went blank. She could not get the details because the call cut in halfway through and then got stepped on by the hum. But the phrase stuck. You are welcome. Welcome to what? A new order. A collection. A farm. I do not know. I do know that the way these transmissions keep using phrases about being invited and welcomed suggests this is not an attack in the way we think of an attack. It is more like a harvest where the crop does not realize it is being picked. If I sound too calm right now, it is because this room gives me one job I can still do. I can move my mouth and record what is happening. I am a forklift driver who became a voice because there was no one else here to do it. When I stop talking, when the brakes stretch too long, that is when the hum comes in more clearly and I feel the edges of my thoughts blur. So I'm going to keep going a little longer. Then I will walk the aisles again, check the generator, and come back. Somebody out there is probably wondering why the invaders would let us keep any of this running. Why allow any radios, any generators, any stubborn forklift guys in Iowa yelling into the dark? The easy answer is that they do not care. We are background noise. The more unsettling answer is that they very much care, and they are listening carefully to every word to understand how we react. If that is the case, then here is what I want them to hear from me. I know what my name is. I know who my son is. I know the layout of this warehouse, the weight of a loaded pallet, the sound of a diesel engine when it is about to chew itself to pieces. I know the smell of my ex-wife's old perfume, even though she moved to Arizona 3 years ago. I know the way Tyler's handwriting slants on Post-it notes he leaves on the fridge. Those are not just data points for them to scrape. Those are the things that make me someone who can choose. And right now, I'm choosing to stay between the lights instead of walking under them. So if they are listening, here it is again, slow and clear, for whatever passes for their records. My name is Mark Jensen. I'm a forklift driver at a frozen food distribution center north of Des Moines, in Iowa. I know who I am, where I work, and who I love. I know what I'm afraid of, and it is not just blue lights in the sky. It is the idea of waking up 1 minute from now and finding out I walked out of this building without remembering the step that took me outside. For everyone else, for the human ears, this next part is more for you than for them. Because while they are busy logging our voices, we still have to make decisions that matter on the ground. That does not stop just because something new is staring at us from orbit or from whatever altitude those columns hang at. Right after I said all of that, after I made my little speech for the sky, the warehouse shook. Not a huge shake, not a collapse, just a deep, short vibration through the floor. The metal rack uprights rattled. The coffee in my mug rippled against the sides, and somewhere, out in the freezer, a pallet strap snapped with a sharp crack. Nisha flinched hard enough that her chair squealed against the tile. We both looked through the glass toward the south, where downtown sits past the low roll of the land. The blue column over the city had changed. Until then, it had been a clean shape, straight up and down. Now the base of it spread wider, a soft flare at ground level. The color deepened. You know how lightning has grades? Where heat lightning looks thin and distant, and a real ground strike blinds you for a second? This was that version, except frozen in place. The radio board lit with overlapping feeds. For a second it was just noise. Then one voice cut through because the man had the kind of lungs that break through chaos by habit.
This is Lieutenant Daniel Crow, Des Moines Fire Department, Station 1, downtown. If anyone is hearing this, we have partial collapse in the core. I repeat, partial collapse in the core. The blue impact, or whatever you want to call it, just intensified at the base near Court Avenue. It did not explode. It erased. There is a difference.
His breathing was rough. You could hear sirens in the background, the older analog kind. He kept talking without waiting for a reply.
We were working with police, trying to move people out from under the column. Most of them were already gone, to be honest. The ones who stayed either could not walk or would not. We had a ladder truck stretched along East Court. We parked it there earlier to block off traffic. I was 10 feet from the turntable when everything under the blue got brighter by 2 steps. The air felt heavier. My shoulders tensed up on their own. Then a section of buildings just went missing. I am not talking about a blast. There is no debris. The fronts of 3 brick buildings on the north side of Court, the old bar, the pawn shop, that yoga place, are just not there. The interiors are open to the street cleanly, like someone cut them off with a perfect saw that left no dust. Our ladder truck was parked partially in that zone. The front third of it is gone. No metal, no glass, no bodies. The rear 2/3 are still sitting there, rear axle down, stabilizers pressed into asphalt that now faces empty air. The guys who were standing near the cab are gone. The guys near the rear wheels are still here. We are counting heads. The numbers do not line up. We keep forgetting who we lost until someone finds a helmet with a name taped inside. Then it snaps back, and we remember that person existed. Then, 10 minutes later, the memory fades again.
He paused. You could hear glass crunch under his boots.
The gas lines under Court are exposed. We do not see flames yet. I am worried one more change in that column turns every line downtown into a torch. I need to know if anyone up the chain is still coordinating from Camp Dodge or from the Capitol. The governor was in that corridor earlier. We saw his motorcade. Those cars are gone. The section of road they were on is a clean edge now with nothing past it. When I say gone, I mean it. No wrecks, no scorch marks. Just empty space where asphalt should continue. If anyone is north of the river, do not come downtown. The radius is growing in jumps. We do not see it move. We just look away and look back, and the clean cut is farther out.
Nisha wrote, Court Avenue clean cut, partial fire truck gone, governor may be gone, expanding erasure on her pad. Her handwriting was starting to tilt off the lines. I keyed the mic. Lieutenant Crow, this is a distribution center north of the city. We hear you. We are on generator power here. We still have diesel. We do not see structural damage out this way yet. The column over downtown is visible to us from a distance, but we cannot see the base detail. Your description helps. If you can, get your people away from any straight line between the base of that column and the sky. You are describing an effect that is carving space clean. Treat it as a moving cliff. He did not answer me directly. Maybe my feed did not reach him. Maybe someone else was talking over me on his end. He just kept narrating, more for the benefit of anyone who would listen later than for any help he could get now.
We just watched a bus at the edge of the zone disappear in sections. Back half gone, front half still here. People inside screaming for 2 seconds before the sound cut too. Then their seats were empty. No blood, no bodies. The air smells the same. The buildings that remain are intact. Whatever this is, it is not fire. It is not blast. It is selective. It is taking pieces and leaving others. I do not have language for that. I have trained for collapse, for fire, water, wind, not for clean edits.
He started listing cross streets, damage points, where hydrants still worked. The professional in him was still running the checklist even while the rest of his world fell apart. His voice faltered once when he said a name. Mason, then corrected himself, said, No, he was on the front of the truck. He is gone. While Crow talked, I saw a movement in the sky over downtown. Not the column itself. A faint ring around its middle, a change in the glow. The base flared again for a heartbeat, then dimmed slightly. Each time it did that, the floor under my feet vibrated. A second column farther east, the one over the stadium in Iowa City, answered with its own pulse a few moments later. These things are talking to each other in a way the ground can feel. I realized I was still holding the mug. Coffee sloshed onto my hand. Too small a thing to care about in that moment, but my brain grabbed it anyway because it was something normal. Hot liquid, skin, reflex. My fingers let go of the mug. It hit the floor, rolled under the console. The generator room alarm chimed 3 times. Low fuel warning. That sound cut through everything else because it tapped an older, simpler fear. No diesel means no refrigeration. No lights, no radio. When this all started, That generator looked endless to me. A 2,400-gallon tank, half full at least, feels like forever when you are used to thinking in daily shifts. Then the hours add up. The columns in the sky stretch the day in strange ways. Suddenly you look at the gauge and realize you burned through more than you thought because some of the gaps in your memory were filled with the steady consumption of fuel. I told Crow I would be right back and set the mic down, even though he could not hear me. Habit. I jogged back through the hallway, down the metal steps, past the break room with its vending machines full of snacks no one had touched since lunch. My boots rang on the concrete. The generator room smelled of exhaust and warm oil. The tank gauge needle sat lower than it should. We have a fuel log on the wall. I flipped through it. At normal load with all the freezers and lights running, we burn around 9 gallons an hour. I did the math in my head. Started at around 1,200 gallons earlier in the day. The clock on the wall said just past 1 in the morning. That is 12, 13, 14 hours of runtime. That should put us somewhere around 1,000 gallons. The gauge said 700. That missing 300 gallons did not match any hour count I could trust. I went back upstairs. Nisha was still in her chair, listening to a different feed now. Some federal voice from Washington talking about relocation corridors that no one could reach because every major highway was either jammed or cut by blue edges. I tapped her notebook and pointed at the corner. Fuel, I said. We will not last as long as we thought if we keep the building at full load. She rubbed her eyes.
How bad?
I told her the numbers. She stared past me at the racks.
We shut down sections.
She said slowly.
We pick what to save. Frozen food or information.
Most of what sits in this warehouse is stuff for grocery chains within a couple 100 miles. Pizzas, vegetables, ice cream, bulk bags of chicken. Things most people would not call strategic. In a world where supply lines are fractured by sections of highway that vanish and cities that get edited, this place becomes a lifeline for whoever is still cooking meals over a working stove. At the same time, this radio board is the only thing tying my voice to my son and to whoever else still has ears. I sat down in the chair beside her. We can stage a controlled shutdown, I said. We keep one freezer at full capacity, the one with the densest pallets, least airspace, doors closed, no traffic. Let the others rise a few degrees. Food will hold for a while, and we limit lights. Emergency strip in the aisles, office dark except when we are walking, that cuts load. The generator runs leaner. She frowned at the glass.
If we shut down too much, the compressors might not start clean again when we need them. You know that.
I nodded. We do not have a perfect choice. We have options that are less bad. I would rather have one working freezer and one working radio in 3 days than 4 half-warm rooms full of spoiled food and silence. We both went down to the control panel. I flipped breakers one by one, watching the load meter drop. The roar of the compressors in the far bays eased. The air got less frantic. The freezer we chose to keep fully active hummed with a steady tone. We taped signs across the doors of the others. Do not enter, temp rising, last resort only. It felt wrong to mark food that way in a crisis, but it gave us structure. Back in dispatch, the soundscape had shifted. With part of the internal noise gone, the hum from the sky seemed louder through the building. It is not an audible tone in the normal sense. It is a pressure in the jaw, a sensation along the nose, somewhere between sound and touch. It comes in on waves, timed with those pulses in the distant columns. The radio flared again. Another civilian voice, this time closer to home. The man said he was calling from Ankeny itself, from the area near the John Deere plant and the freight yards. Name was Kirk Matthews. He was a yard manager for a railroad company. His words came out steady, but you could hear the grit of someone who had been yelling over engines for most of his life.
This is Kirk out by the rail yard. We just had a string of tankers ghost on us. That is the only word I have. They were sitting on track 3. 32 cars, full of anhydrous ammonia and ethanol. We were in the control shack, watching the monitors. Lights flickered, same as everyone is seeing. The blue from downtown is just a glow on our southern horizon. We are not under one of the columns here. We are on the edge of whatever it is. 1 second, those tankers are on the cameras. Next second, the image skips. Not a smooth roll, a hard cut. The cars beyond them are still there. The middle section of the string is gone. The couplers at both brakes are clean off. No torn metal, no derailed wheels. Track is intact. Ballast untouched. The pressure gauges in the control panel still read full on those missing cars. The system thinks they exist. Physically, they do not. If they decided to spit that stuff back out somewhere else, whoever gets it is in trouble.
He coughed, a rough smoker's cough.
I am staying clear of any lines that run under those lights. If you are in town and you hear anything about tank cars raining from the sky or appearing in fields, that may be ours. We have lost 3 employees to missing time in the last hour. They go for a smoke, step around a blind corner, and none of us remember what they were wearing 10 minutes later. We have their names on the shift sheet. We do not see their faces in our heads. It is a sick feeling.
Our warehouse sits a short drive from those tracks. Hearing that section of tankers go missing made me visualize 32 cylinders of dangerous chemicals popping into existence over some unsuspecting town. That is another part of this invasion. It is not just people they are moving or deleting. It is hardware, trains, ladders, government motorcades. Anything caught in the right shape of that field. I told Kirk we heard him. I told him about the partial ladder truck downtown. He swore under his breath and said he was locking down the yard and sending anyone still able to think straight into the oldest building with the thickest walls. Then he cut off. The next time I glanced at the sky, the blue column over downtown had a second ring around its upper third. Not bright, just a faint halo. I pointed it out to Nisha. That was not there earlier, I said. She squinted through the glass.
Maybe this is stages,
She said.
First the column, then the flare at the base, then the ring.
Stages for what? I asked. She did not answer. In between these outside voices, we still had to live in here. That part is easy to forget when you are listening to other people's disasters. We had to eat, we had to drink water, we had to use the bathroom without wondering if the walls would still be there when we opened the stall door. At some point, around what the wall clock claimed was 3 a.m, I found myself standing in the break room staring at the vending machines. Rows of chips, candy bars, little plastic sandwiches. It looked normal. The microwave clock was frozen on 12:00. I grabbed a granola bar without checking the name on the wrapper, tore it open, chewed. My jaw kept moving. I did not taste anything. I had to look down and confirm that the wrapper was actually in my hand and not something I had imagined. There are small pieces of unreality in nights like this. They creep up on you. Back on the mic, I tried to bring the tone back down for anybody on the verge of snapping. You can hear panic in someone's breathing even when they fake calm words. I did not want to add to that. To whoever is listening, I said, I know most of what you are hearing from different places tonight sounds impossible. Train cars vanishing, buildings sliced, people walking like they are on wires. I am not here to argue about what you believe. I am looking at a sky that does not match any Weather Channel graphic I have ever seen. The details change, but the core is this. There is an external force messing with our sense of time and place. It is selective. It is careful. It tests. It records. We are not powerless in the middle of that. We still choose where we stand and who we stand with. We still move our own bodies in directions that matter. As I spoke, the lower hum pressed in again. The little patterns inside it started to line up with my syllables. Not echoing, more like an accompaniment that saw where my words were going and slid under them. I could feel my tongue slow on certain phrases. Nisha raised a hand and made a cutting motion. I took my finger off the push to talk. The hum receded by 1 notch.
You hear it?
She asked. In my jaw, I said, and more than my ears. She nodded.
It peaked when you said we still choose. Then it eased.
Maybe that is paranoia. Or maybe whatever is out there is paying more attention to the idea of people choosing than to people describing damage. Hard to say from one observation. I am a forklift guy, not a scientist. Still, it made me think about what messages matter enough to risk their attention. Sometime later, the boards flickered in a different way. Instead of human voices, the screen printed a string of symbols across one of the channels. Old equipment, amber display, nothing fancy. Yet there it was. A line of characters that did not belong to any setting label. A combination of numbers and letters that meant nothing to us. Nisha leaned in.
That is not from our hardware,
She said.
This unit is too old to display that on its own. Somebody is feeding data into it.
The string repeated 3 times, then stopped. We wrote it down anyway. Maybe it is coordinates. Maybe it is just noise. Maybe someone on their end is trying their first attempt at text instead of voice. My son did not check in again during that stretch. I kept waiting for his tone, the way you wait for a familiar truck engine in a loading yard. Every time a male voice in his age range came through, my chest tightened for a second. Instead, we got fragments from all over. A sailor from Norfolk saying the ships in the harbor were being held in place by something the engineers could not measure. A woman from Denver screaming that a ring had formed over the Rockies and then cutting out mid-word. A teacher from a small town in Kansas reading off the names of her students into the void, as if someone on the other end might collect those names and keep them safe. The ring over our downtown column grew clearer. By what the wall clock claimed was 4 in the morning, it had narrowed and moved downward along the shaft of light. It hung above the rooftops now. The base flare had stepped closer to the river. The vibration through the floor came more often. At some point, exhaustion slid over me in a heavy sheet. My head nodded in the chair. Nisha noticed. She said my name 3 times before I answered.
You need 10 minutes horizontal,
She said.
I will watch the board.
I do not want both of us foggy, I said.
Exactly,
She said.
Go lie down on the couch in the manager's office. Shut the door just in case. I will call you if anything comes in from Tyler or from anyone local.
She was right. Fighting sleep would not help anyone. I walked to the manager's office, closed the door, and lay down on the couch that still smelled faintly of cologne and paper dust. I told myself I would just rest my eyes. I woke up standing in the middle of the yard. Cold air on my face, gravel under my boots, sky above me a patchwork of blue columns and darker gaps. No memory of getting there. My heart slammed into my ribs so hard I stumbled. The distribution center loomed in front of me, the big company logo a pale rectangle against the darker wall. The office windows were lit. I checked my watch. It said 5:27. The last number I remembered seeing on the office clock before lying down was 4:10. I did not feel rested. I felt stripped, as if someone had run a finger through my thoughts and taken a thin slice out of the middle. I looked down at my hands. The walkie-talkie from inside the building was in my right one. The keys to straight truck number 3 were in my left. I had not decided to take them. The choice had been made somewhere in the missing gap. My legs had brought me to the driver's door of that truck. The handle was inches from my fingers. For a second, a terrible calm sat in my chest. A feeling that getting in, turning the key, and driving south toward the brightest light was perfectly reasonable. A quiet voice in the back of my head said, "Of course, you have been invited. You are part of this. The path is simple." Then another part of me jerked awake hard. It did not feel gentle. It felt like someone punched the inside of my own skull. I gasped and stepped back. The keys clinked against each other in my palm. My shoulder hit the side of the truck. I said my name out loud. "My name is Mark Jensen," I said in the empty yard. "I am a forklift driver. My son is Tyler. I am not going downtown." The calm pulled at me for another second like a hand still gripping my elbow. Then it let go. The keys felt suddenly heavy. I turned, walked back toward the building. Each step took effort, as if the air were thicker near the trucks. Inside, Nisha's face went pale when she saw me.
You have been gone for almost an hour,
She said.
I went to wake you 10 minutes after you lay down. The couch was empty. Your radio and the truck keys were missing. You did not answer when I called your name. I was about to hit the alarm.
I set the keys on the desk. My hand shook. I did not decide to leave, I said. Something walked me to that door in pieces. The gap hit me between the couch and the yard. When I came back to myself, I was one step from climbing in. She wrote, Mark attempted to walk to truck during missing time, self-resisted after identity check in the margin of her notes. Then she underlined it.
That is what the people under the light felt,
She said quietly.
except they did not have a reason to pull back, or a kid they needed to talk to, or someone screaming their name in an empty warehouse.
We both sat in silence for a moment. The generator hummed. The hum from the sky pressed in. My own body felt less trustworthy than it had an hour earlier. If you are listening and you think strong will is enough to keep you from walking toward those things, learn from my little trip. I did not feel any urge until the gap ended, and I was already at the door. Whatever is pushing us is not always the loud temptation you see in movies. Sometimes it is a quiet removal of the part of you that would complain. From that point on, Nisha and I set up a simple rule. No one moves around the building alone for more than 10 minutes. No one sleeps without the other checking in at set intervals. We wrote those intervals on the whiteboard in big letters and reset a kitchen timer every time one of us walked away. If one person does not answer when the timer rings, the other goes looking immediately. It is not foolproof. It is better than nothing. Not long after I came back from the yard, the board crackled again with a voice we both recognized. Peter from Iowa City. His tone was more ragged than before.
This is Peter again from near Iowa City. If the same people are listening, we made it west of town. We used that frontage road your dad talked about, Tyler. If you are hearing this, your dad's directions helped. We are near a small town called Oxford. Population sign says 800-something. I do not see that many people. The main street is empty except for cars parked at polite angles. Every house we passed had the front door open. Inside, we saw living rooms with lights still on and television screens frozen on that same emergency message. People are gone, not in every house. In some, we found someone sitting in a chair staring at nothing. When we spoke their names, some of them turned their heads very slowly and said, "We are welcomed," in the same tone, same pause between words. It did not matter if they were 70 years old or 10, same phrase, same sound. We backed out of those houses and did not touch them.
He took a breath.
We tried the fire station, no one there. One truck missing, one still in the bay, gear on the floor. The bulletin board in the kitchen had a printout from National Weather Service about storms next week. It felt wrong how normal that was. We grabbed bottled water, blankets, a few radios. We are in the station now. We closed the doors. The blue on the horizon keeps getting brighter. There is a smaller column forming west of us toward Williamsburg. The space between the Iowa City light and that one is shrinking. We are trying to stay between them. Your words, sir, the forklift driver at the warehouse. The space between the lights feels safer than under them.
Hearing him repeat my own line back to me was a strange mirror. He continued.
We have a problem. The hum is inside the station now. It is not loud, but it changes when we talk. When we say certain words, it swells. When we say others, it dips. Maria started saying her full name, address, date of birth, the names of her parents, over and over. The hum faded each time she did that. Then it came back stronger, as if it learned the pattern. Two of us forgot what day it was. One forgot what year. We wrote it on the wall in big letters. 2025, March. We will keep updating it if anything shifts again.
I leaned in. Peter, this is Mark at the warehouse. You are doing the right thing, staying between the columns. If the smaller one west keeps forming, You may need to move north or south along that gap. Follow whatever paths keep you away from both bases. There are farm roads there, gravel, less traffic, fewer people to get caught. Watch for any change in air pressure. If your ears pop, retreat. He said,
We will. Tyler is with us. He is okay. He is stubborn, but you know that.
Hearing that sentence properly nearly dropped me out of the chair. I had been picturing Tyler alone or with unknown faces. Knowing he was with a small group in a fire station with walls and equipment and a name on the front gave me a real anchor. Put him on for a second if you can, I said. There was a shuffle, then Tyler's voice came through, closer to the mic than before.
Dad, we found turnout gear, helmets, coats. We feel stupid, but we put it on. It makes us feel less exposed. We have trucks if we need them. The keys are on a hook. The gas gauge says half on one rig. I do not know if that means anything anymore. We are thinking of staying here until the space between the lights shrinks too much, then moving north on County Road 8. You remember that one. The one with the grain elevator at the bend.
I did. We drove that stretch once for no good reason except to see more corn and talk about nothing. Back then it felt boring, now it was a lifeline. Stay off the interstate, I said. Stay near ditches and buildings where you can duck if something strange happens. Keep saying your names. Keep your helmets on. Metal between you and the air cannot hurt. The lower hum under his words pulsed again when he said my name. I could almost feel it in my tongue as his mouth formed the sound. Then the line clipped. Someone on their end must have let go of a button too soon, or the interference grabbed the tail of the signal and pinched it off. The ring over downtown kept dropping. By first light, or what passed for first light under a sky stapled with blue columns, it sat halfway down the shaft, not far above the buildings. The base flare had eaten more of Court Avenue. Reports from Lieutenant Crow stopped. We did not know if that meant he had moved out of range, his radios had been taken over, or he had stepped under the clean edge and vanished with his truck. We watched the fuel gauge sink to 600 gallons. At our reduced load, that bought us maybe 30 or 40 hours, depending on how honest the gauge was and how many more time gaps stole our sense of hours. After that, silence unless we found more diesel. There is a truck stop a mile down the road. Under normal conditions, I could drive there, top off our tank, and be back in 20 minutes. Under this sky, crossing open ground felt closer to walking across a firing range blindfolded. We talked it through.
If the lights move closer, if one pops up over the truck stop, we lose both you and the fuel.
Nisha said.
If we stay here and the generator dies, we lose refrigeration and communication. If we leave now, we risk disappearing in the gap. If we wait, we risk being forced to leave when things are worse.
Real decisions in disasters are rarely clean. You pick between bad choices and hope the consequences land where you can absorb them. In the end, we compromised. We would not drive to the fuel. We would bring the fuel to us. The truck stop's underground tanks are out of reach, but their above-ground storage, the diesel pumps, feed through accessible lines. Our warehouse maintenance crew has a portable transfer pump we use to move fuel from delivery trucks into our own generator tank when the main line is down. It is old, mechanical, with a hand crank backup. If we can get that pump to the truck stop on a pallet jack in the back of a straight truck, we can pull fuel back to portable drums, then bring them here. Smaller risk than driving the generator itself into the open. Still a risk. Still involves stepping out from between our concrete walls into a world where sections of reality are being edited. We pick daylight for the run, or what passes for it. The blue columns are less blinding when the sun is up, even if the sun itself is a dull disk behind a high haze. We waited until the hum dipped. We listened to the pattern for an hour, noted peaks and valleys. Maybe it is rhythm, maybe it is us imposing meaning on noise, but the dips made us feel slightly less watched. I took the wheel this time by choice. After the yard incident, the idea of stepping back into a truck cab made my stomach twist, but someone had to do it, and sending Nisha alone felt worse. She would ride shotgun, monitor the radio, and watch me for any sign that my eyes were going glassy. We loaded the transfer pump onto the back of the straight truck 3, strapped it down, and left the dock door partially open so we did not have to get out to raise it on our return. Driving through that gate felt like stepping off a ledge. The road between our building and the truck stop is a short strip of asphalt past an office complex and a row of trees. On a normal weekday, it is full of commuter cars heading for Interstate 35. This morning, it was lined with empty vehicles. Some had their doors open, some had trunks popped. A few were nose-to-nose in minor collisions that no one had bothered to exchange insurance information over. No bodies, no obvious blood. Just the leftover arrangement of a panicked exit. The truck's diesel engine rattled under my feet. Each time I glanced toward downtown, the sight of that hanging blue column tugged at the corner of my vision. I kept my eyes on the road.
Talk.
Nisha said.
Say something boring. Keep yourself anchored.
I'm driving a straight truck, I said. I'm north of Des Moines. I'm 5'10". I have a scar on my left wrist from breaking a glass in high school. I hate the smell of microwave fish. My son failed algebra once and then passed it after summer school. I cried in my car when he texted me that grade.
Good,
She said.
keep going.
We reached the truck stop. The main building's automatic doors were stuck half open. The interior lights were on. The lot was full of rigs and cars, all empty. A coffee cup sat on the hood of a pickup truck, still half full. The air did not feel heavier here, which I took as a good sign. We parked near the diesel pumps. I killed the engine and listened. The hum from the sky was present but not overwhelming. No shimmer in the air, no sudden ear pressure. My watch ticked forward in a steady, normal way, or as normal as I could trust. We moved fast. Hooked the transfer pump into the main line, ran hoses into 2 drums we had strapped to the back. The pump motor chugged, old and reliable. Diesel flowed slow but steady. While it ran, I scanned the lot. An interstate runs just beyond the truck stop. I could see the overpass from where we stood. A blue column farther south grazed the edge of the horizon. A semi sat jackknifed on the ramp, cab empty, trailer still upright. For a moment, my mind placed Raoul's voice next to that image. Somewhere out there, more drivers sat in lines they could not leave. The transfer pump coughed once, then settled. Fuel climbed toward our marked level in the drums. My hands smelled of diesel and cold air. It felt almost normal. Then my head rang. Not my ears, my head. A hollow, high tone, not connected to any sound source in the environment. My vision stuttered for half a breath. The truck stop canopy shimmered at one edge, a narrow band, as if the air there had different thickness.
Back in the truck.
Nisha said sharply.
We are full enough.
We grabbed the hoses, clamped them, left the pump connected so we did not waste time unbolting. The drums were not as full as I wanted, but pushing for one more minute under that invisible pressure would have been stupid. We climbed into the cab. I turned the key. For 2 seconds, nothing happened. The dash stayed dark. My stomach dropped. Then the engine caught in a rough, late turn. The dash lights flickered on. The radio in Nisha's hand spat a burst of static. A broken sentence cut through.
We see you.
Then silence. We drove back to the warehouse at a steady, cautious pace. No missing gap this time. Every second was accounted for in my head. Each signpost, each parked car, each crack in the asphalt. We backed the truck to the generator room, transferred fuel in with the same pump. When the gauge needle climbed, I felt a real physical relief. A few more days of power, assuming the world stayed in one piece that long. Back on the mic, I told everyone what we had done. Not to brag, to give a blueprint. If you have above-ground fuel and a way to move it, do not waste it by waiting for someone else to flip a switch, I said. Make small runs. Do not be a hero. Watch for air pressure changes. Each gallon you move is another hour you can talk, cook, warm yourself. These are the small logistics that will matter when the big systems freeze. The hum swelled again when I spoke about moving fuel. Then it dipped. I do not know what that means. I only know that somewhere above us, something is listening to the way we rearrange our own resources in response to their pressure. We are far past the point where this feels temporary. This is not a storm that will blow through by morning. It is a structural change in how space and time behave in patches. Downtowns are being edited. Highways are being sliced. People are losing pieces of themselves. Even so, we keep stacking the little choices. Pick which freezer to preserve. Decide when to risk a run. Decide to come back from a truck door in a missing hour. Decide to tape your own name to a wall in a fire station. Decide to put on a helmet in a small town in Iowa because a forklift driver told you a story through a scratchy speaker. Somebody out there is probably still wondering why the invaders let us keep any of this running. Radios, generators, small, stubborn voices. I do not have an answer that will make you comfortable. I have two possibilities and neither makes this easier. One, we are irrelevant background noise. Two, we are a key part of their experiment. In both cases, we still own the space inside our own names. They can bend time, carve buildings, and move trains. They do not yet fully own what you say when you look at your own hands and decide which way to walk. So I will keep doing this. I will keep talking from this office in this frozen warehouse north of Des Moines. I will keep saying my name. I will keep logging yours. I will keep telling my son which roads still exist and which gaps in the sky to avoid. I will keep telling you which small tricks keep one more hour of power in your tank. If they are listening carefully to every word, then they can add this to their recordings. We are not just data. We are not just voices in a grid to be sorted and filed. We are people sitting in truck stops, fire stations, ships, and apartments, still making choices they did not program. And as long as even a handful of us keep doing that, the story is not finished, no matter how many blue columns they hang over our cities.